Y'all know what it is. Y'all know who it is. It's your boy Pharaoh the God, always on the job. I got five. Let's talk. And as always, it's real talk, raw talk. And you know it's that time again to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell another friend. It don't cost you much to touch, so go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, support the channel, support your boy, and above all, support the movement. Welcome to another episode of I Got Five Let's Talk, where we keep it fair like a California bear, and we ain't California raisins, so we ain't doing no hating. As y'all know, I'm your host, Pharaoh the God, always on the job, and this is I Got Five Let's Talk, the platform podcast, War Report. A lot's been going on lately in the war, and a lot of people, Americans, citizens, have been disgusted by Trump and his antics and his cronies, his cohorts, his compadres, and Israel. They have endorsed an agenda that is not endorsed by the American people, let alone endorsed by the international global community. The things that we have been seeing unfolding in this war are quite catastrophic, genocidal, homicidal, and downright dangerous to humanistic longevity. Everybody have seen how the war has been stopped, ceasefire, and then people break the ceasefire. We've been seeing this continuation of bad press for the American government, especially for Trump. And a lot of people don't know what that actually brings. So out of all this bad publicity, it's time for PR control, damage control. Now comes the time where America is doing damage control through the media. And what has been the number one agitator, manipulator, and liar for Trump? There's two organizations. Cash Patel's FBI and ICE. We have saw ICE going to schools, going to churches. We seen ICE go on the job sites. We seen ICE gathering up illegal immigrants, but the way that they're grabbing illegal immigrants is kind of, and at sometimes, downright disgusting. Now I get it; they're here illegal. They refuse to do due diligence and due process, and activate the American dream of being a law-abiding citizen. We get off the Richter about illegal immigrants, and then we forget about law. See, people want people to treat illegal immigrants as if they're human, right? We can treat them as if they're human, but they are still criminals. They have broken the law. And I'm not saying they broke the law to where they need 10, 20, 5 years, 7 years in prison. I am not saying that. What I am saying is these people had enough time to stand in line and activate due diligence. But based on the racist outcome of what Trump is doing, there needs to be some type of damage control. We need to show America that we're doing our job. So today I'm going to run some clips and I'm going to run some content just to give you, to peel back the layers of your eyes to show you the damage control that they're doing in America. And I always say they expose themselves by trying not to expose themselves. They're going to war with Iran because of a regime change, but here in America, it has just been publicized that a drug dealer in America, not nowhere, not outside of America, but a drug dealer in America was caught with $4.7 billion in cash. $4.7 billion in cash. Yes, you heard me right. Oh, but you say, Pharaoh, he just got found with some cash. He got found with 12 tons of drugs also. He got found with so much shit that we gonna break it down. And today, I'm gonna expose the Trump regime of how they are using ICE and FBI to clean up their image. These are the same organizations that we watched for the last year destroy the values of America. So before we get into that content, man, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, support the channel, support your boy, and above all, man, support the movement. This podcast will never be monetized, so I appreciate all comments and all likes. Support the channel, man. Let's run this content.
Can show you the seizure at 198 kilograms of counterfeit fentanyl pills, which is approximately 1.7 million pills, 12 kilograms of fentanyl powder, and 2.5 pounds of meth.
And now to a story you'll see only on CBS News Miami. A major drug enforcement operation is underway in North Miami. We've learned.
On paper, Isla Mariposa was a hurricane shelter, a private island owned by a billionaire philanthropist. Solar panels, desalination tanks, emergency bunkers built for regional disaster response. But when FBI and IC agents cut through the first steel door, they didn't find food supplies. They found vacuum-sealed cash stacked from floor to ceiling. Behind the second door, they found pallets wrapped in black plastic. Behind the third, they found a wall of servers still warm. And by sunrise, the Department of Justice realized the bunker wasn't the end of the case. It was the map. For years, Elias Voss had been untouchable. He owned hotels in Miami, shipping companies in Houston, biotech startups in Boston, and a private aviation firm operating out of Teterboro, New Jersey. On television, he was the calm billionaire in a Navy suit, talking about disaster relief, clean energy, and rebuilding communities after hurricanes. He donated to hospitals. He funded university labs. He hosted charity dinners where senators smiled beside him under chandeliers. But federal investigators were not watching the chandeliers. They were watching the boats. The first clue came from a customs analyst in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Her name was Mara Delgado, and her job was not glamorous. She sat behind 3 monitors, looking for patterns in cargo manifests. Most days, the patterns were boring. Repeated addresses, incorrect weights, strange routing choices. But one night, she noticed a medical supply shipment listed as portable refrigeration units. The container came from Cartagena. It was routed through Kingston, then Miami, then a small port facility near Key Largo. But the weight was wrong. Not slightly wrong. Nearly 9 tons wrong.
Now, remember and keep in mind that this woman has been watching these containers have excessive amount. The weight amount is continuously and every time wrong. She sees this, but yet she doesn't say nothing. They hire people in these positions to notice discrepancies like this. Like I said, keep in mind, these were vessels that were off by tons in weight, and she never reported them.
Mara flagged it. Then she looked backward. Same shipper, same route, same weight discrepancy. 12 times in 8 months. Every container had a different label.
12 times, 8 months, she only flags one and begins to look back. So it took her 8 times, and these things were tons. It took her 8 times to recognize something was off with these shipping containers. Something was off with this company. She gets paid to recognize this. But she's somehow, for some reason, not doing her job.
Water purification systems, generator parts, emergency roofing materials, all marked for the same destination. The Voss Foundation Disaster Preparedness Hub, Isla Mariposa, a private island 90 miles off the coast of Florida. At first, nobody wanted to touch it. Voss had lawyers everywhere. His foundation had government contracts. His security...
Now, I know I'm stopping a little bit, but I want to give you the correlation here, and I want you to see the correlation. Somebody gave up Jeffrey Epstein for a reason. And from the looks of it, somebody gave up this man as well. This man has an island. Jeffrey Epstein had an island. Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking little children. This man is trafficking drugs. He's a terrorist inside of America. And we are worried about Iran. We are worried about what's going on in another region of the country when we have things like this that are sitting right up under our noses. Continue to watch and you'll see how manipulative this whole system is.
Team included former military advisors and retired federal agents. Even inside federal offices, his name created hesitation. Not fear exactly. Something worse. Silence. But Mara kept pulling records. She found that the
Man, I'm sorry, y'all. I just gotta stop it. I gotta point things out. They were scared to question him, scared to investigate him. Why? Why were people so scared to investigate this guy? And you want me to believe that he was a law-abiding citizen and that nobody knew what he was doing? Okay.
Island received more emergency supplies than several counties combined. In 1 year, Voss imported enough medical insulation foam to cover 3 airport terminals, yet the island had fewer than 40 full-time staff. That was the first question. Why would a tiny private island need cargo volumes built for a city? The second question came from Miami. A DEA financial crimes unit had been tracking cash deposits through shell businesses across South Florida. Car washes, luxury rentals, nightclubs, private clinics. Each one looked separate. Different owners, different accountants, different banks. But the deposits moved in the same rhythm. Every 13 days, money entered. Every 14 days, it vanished. Not transferred overseas all at once. That would be too obvious. Instead, it moved through invoices, consulting fees, equipment leases, disaster readiness grants. And again, one name kept appearing in the background. Not Elias Voss directly. The Voss Foundation. The public story was clean. The foundation paid vendors to prepare communities for extreme weather, but the private ledgers told another story. A refrigeration company in Tampa billed the foundation $22 million for equipment it never delivered. A warehouse in Atlanta received disaster funds while operating out of a locked storage unit. A research nonprofit in Boston paid a logistics partner registered to a mailbox in Delaware.
Now this is done by FEMA, Department of Homeland Security. These are the people that deal with FEMA. Federal. This is federal. And this man has access to every natural disaster on the globe. He has a company that orchestrates natural disaster relief. Now ask yourself, this man rubbing shoulders with this type of elite. Now ask yourself, how did the fires of Altadena started? How did the fires in Hawaii start? How did the fires start in California hills? How did the fires start or the floods start in Katrina? The floods in Texas or wherever. We have been known to the conspiracy theories that the American government tampers with the weather. We've heard these conspiracy theories. So if this man is in I'm going to say human resources, but in human disasters, giving relief to human disasters, he is moving drugs around the world. And somebody that is of the elites knows that this was going on. Why? Because people were scared to investigate him.
Every thread led somewhere else, and that was the design. The system was not built to hide one crime. It was built to make every crime look like paperwork. Then came the human part. Because systems like this don't stay inside bank accounts. They land on doorsteps. In Phoenix, a mother named Lena Cross opened a package addressed to her son. He was 19, a college sophomore. The label said it contained imported protein supplements. Inside were 2 vacuum-sealed bricks of synthetic opioids. Her son swore he didn't order them. At first, nobody believed him. Local police thought it was a campus distribution case, but the tracking number led to a fulfillment center outside Dallas. That fulfillment center was operated by a company tied to a disaster logistics vendor. That vendor had received payments from the Voss Foundation. A billionaire's island was now connected to a teenager's bedroom in Arizona, and federal investigators knew they were no longer looking at smuggling. They were looking at distribution. The breakthrough came from a storm. A tropical system formed east of the Bahamas, and private vessels around Isla Mariposa were forced into harbor. One of them, a 160-foot yacht named the Meridian Star, docked unexpectedly in Fort Lauderdale. Customs officers inspected it. Nothing obvious. Champagne, hot crates, diving equipment. But a drug dog alerted near a sealed maintenance panel. Behind it, agents found a hidden compartment lined with lead shielding. Inside were satellite phones, encrypted drives, and a ledger written in coded initials. One entry repeated more than any other. EV, Island Reserve. The phrase sounded vague, but when analysts compared it with maritime traffic, banking records, and cargo manifests, it matched the rhythm of the entire operation. Every major shipment, every cash movement, every rerouted container. Island Reserve. That was when the FBI opened a full case. ICE Homeland Security.
Right there. That's when FBI and ICE opened the investigation. Who needs a win here? The American perception is twats. The American constituents, populace, is not in agreement with Trump, his tactics, his agendas, nor this war. So in order to get the American society back on your side, you have to do something to win them over. You got to. You fucked up. This is the American apology to, this is Trump's apology to the American people. I'm sorry, but I'm for y'all. Let me show y'all how much I'm for my American people. And I always say they expose themselves when trying not to expose themselves. You go get a drug runner or a drug lord like Elias Voss in America. You don't go get an El Chapo from Mexico. You expose yourself and let the world know. You let the American society know what's going on behind the curtains in America. You expose yourself because y'all knew This man had this power and he was doing this type of stuff. Y'all knew this. But y'all looked around and said, how does Trump get a win right now? How does Trump get a win? Trump gets a win, but we have to make it look good. We're going to use the ICE, that's Trump's goon squad, and Kash Patel's lying, manipulating, sabotaging FBI. We're going to get both of these institutions, and we're going to go after this guy right here that we already set up. Somebody threw this man under the bus. But by throwing him under the bus, Trump and his cronies expose why we do not need to be going to war across waters, and we need to be going to war against drug dealers and pedophiles in our country. That's what we need to be doing. We don't need to be going to war in Iran. We have too many unrighteous things that are surviving and thriving in America right now. This man was found with $47 billion in cash. That's enough money to help out whole nations. He got found with 12 tons of drugs, a cocktail of drugs. That's enough drugs to kill a whole nation. Then this guy had information. Let's finish running this though, man, because I don't know if y'all seeing what I'm seeing.
Investigations joined for cross-border trafficking. DEA joined for narcotics. The DOJ Public Integrity Section quietly started reviewing names attached to foundation grants and regulatory delays. Because another pattern had appeared. Every time a shipment was flagged, the flag disappeared. Not rejected. Not resolved. Deleted. That meant someone with access was helping. The mid-twist came in a conference room in Washington, D.C. Investigators expected corruption at a port. Maybe a customs broker. Maybe a shipping inspector. Instead, they found something larger. A senior emergency procurement official had been approving Voss Foundation contracts for years. Her office controlled federal disaster readiness partnerships. Her signature gave Voss's shipments priority clearance during hurricane season. Her department labeled the cargo as time-sensitive humanitarian equipment.
Now this the thing. You get stabbed time-sensitive humanitarian aid. Fuck, man. Fucking smokers. Well, I'm about to say, man, her name is on these ships, right? So in order to deter any type of terrorist activity or homeland terrorist activity, these ships need to be inspected. What she signs her name on needs to be checked by somebody else. But these people in this position were trusted. You make the call, what you say is cool. But what about that lady at the bottom that seen 9 ships, over 5 ships that were wrong by weight by tons of weight? Not one, several tons of weight. This lady that put her name and stamped these papers is what actually got his organization off the ground. Who helped him get this organization off the ground? See, because my eyes and my mind works a little bit different. If you have $4.7 billion in cash and 12 tons of drugs at your residence, you're a motherfucking terrorist. And everybody that conspired with you, from the top of senators, generals, ex-military official, ex-Green Beret, everybody needs to be investigated and held in jail until this is over with. These people need to be getting treated like everyday folk. And some say, oh, well, it's because he got money. Does it make it right that he has money? He was caught with evidence. Based on the preponderance of evidence, which is the thing that most people in America are found guilty on. But you got to ask yourself, what is the preponderance of evidence? That means the evidence that I have or I accumulated in front of me has rendered my belief that you are guilty based off the evidence. That's what preponderance of evidence. I pondered on the evidence of what's in front of me and I find you guilty. Based on the preponderance of evidence of $4.7 billion in cash and 12 tons of drugs, he's guilty. Now we need to get to know who was working with him. So let's run this content and find it out.
And once that label went on a container, inspections dropped, delays disappeared, fees were waived. The bunker on Isla Mariposa hadn't been hidden from the system. It had been protected by the system. That changed everything. Now federal agents had two investigations moving at once. One into the island. One into the people who made the island invisible. For 6 months, agents watched. They monitored flights leaving Teterboro. They tracked boats moving between the Bahamas, Miami, and Puerto Rico. They followed money from Houston oil service firms to offshore trusts in the British Virgin Islands. They mapped shell companies in Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming. And slowly, the clean public image of Elias Voss began to crack. He wasn't just a billionaire with a criminal side business. He was the central bank of a shadow network. Cash came in from street-level drug distribution. It was packed, counted, sprayed, sealed, and moved through logistics routes disguised as relief operations.
That is pure evil. You are using American tragedy in order to continue your criminal operation. He manipulated the very fabric of American society. He eliminated and destroyed the trust of people trying to do good. I'm not going to say that everybody involved with his organization is bad, but at least those in the top officiating positions need to be questioned. Organization of this magnitude does not go unnoticed or without whispers. It just doesn't. And if you are the belief that he was just so good not to get caught, he's already caught because he's working with them people. Do you think you can get $4.7 billion in cash without doing some illegal shit? Being tied to some criminal people that's in high places? Do you honestly believe that you can have 12 tons of drugs in your house and nobody knows? Somebody knew. Trump and his cronies in the government needed a win. This is damage control. How do you think they knew who this man was and what he was doing? Because they were tied at the hip with him. See, what people don't understand is what you are seeing is our American system working in favor of the criminals. These people are in bed with criminals, but act like they don't know. This is destroying the fabric of America by Trump and his cronies. Why? Because you put some bullshit like this out there. No, it ain't even bullshit. It's cow shit. because it ain't strong enough to be bullshit. We see through the lies. This is damage control because of the perception that Trump is in with the war in Israel. So Trump needs a win. FBI needs a win. ICE needs a win in hopes that the American perception of their presentation becomes valid. This is what they are hoping with this win, but this isn't the only one. This isn't the only one.
Came north through Caribbean channels. Cash moved south through charitable procurement. The island sat in the middle, not as a hideout, as a clearinghouse. Then agents got their first look underground. A former island contractor came forward after his brother overdosed in Jacksonville. He had worked on Isla Mariposa 2 years earlier. He told investigators the bunker was far bigger than public permits showed. The approved plan listed 3.
Did he come forward? Or did he get caught up in the investigation and the police told him, the DOJ, the DHS, the FBI, and ICE told him, if he does not corroborate the story and take the stand against this man, he is going to be hit with orchestrating the drug empire. That's how they got him. I don't believe that his brother died on some pills and he had to change of heart. No. Because if you know the actual evidence, physical evidence that is in these rooms, you are not there just to build. You had insight. It's like you had inside trading abilities. So therefore, insider trading and knowledge of insider trading can get you time in prison. So switch that over to building a drug lord's lair. How much time will the American government give you for that? They are putting the pieces together and they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's, not like they're doing in the war. They're doing it better here. Why? Because they need the American perception to change of Trump.
Reinforced rooms, food storage, water systems, emergency communications. But he described 6 underground levels, a vehicle elevator hidden beneath a maintenance hangar, a tunnel running from the east dock to the central compound, a biometric vault built under the guest villas, and one room nobody was allowed to enter. They called it the chapel, not because anyone prayed there, because everyone went quiet before walking in. That single detail pushed the warrant forward. At 3:40 a.m. on a Thursday morning, federal teams moved into position. FBI tactical units approached by helicopter from the north. ICE, HSI, and...
Now, this is what I want to know. They always expose themselves by not exposing themselves. They said that the chapel pricked their antennas because every time somebody walked in the chapel, they went silent. How do you know this if you're conducting an investigation? It wouldn't prick your interest if the guy whose brother died just told y'all the chapel is secure with some type of material that it can't be bugged, nor can anybody hear inside of it. That would be different. But they said what pricked their interest is that everybody that went into the chapel went silent. How do you know that if you weren't investigating them already, or if you didn't have knowledge of this chapel already, previous knowledge? They are not saying they found this from investigation, prior investigation. They said that they found out that everybody that was walking into the chapel went silent. That means either they had knowledge of the structure of the chapel and they knew its security, or they was doing investigation, which they won't say. Either one is bad. because you're telling us you knew this type of information about this building. But how did you know that? Again, this is ICE and FBI and the DHS. 3 entities that Trump has been using to orchestrate and endorse his agendas and narratives. Again, these things are, I'm glad they got him off the street. I'm glad they locked him up. But it's bigger than Nino Brown. It's bigger than Nino Brown. How big is it? Pause. This is not no run-of-the-mill investigation. Why are these things happening right now when Trump has bad representation? Keep that in mind.
DEA teams came by boat from the west. Coast Guard cutters formed an outer perimeter. A DOJ evidence team waited offshore with digital forensic specialists. The island's private security tried to lock down the compound, but the warrant covered everything. Residences, offices, aircraft, vessels, bunkers, servers, vehicles, every inch of Isla Mariposa. The first visual discovery came inside the fake hurricane shelter. Agents cut open a reinforced pantry wall. Behind it was an elevator panel with no button, only a fingerprint scanner. When technicians bypassed it, the wall split open with a hydraulic hiss. The elevator descended for nearly 40 seconds. When the doors opened, agents saw rows of plastic-wrapped cash stacked on industrial shelving. Not bags, not suitcases, shelving. Like a warehouse. The first estimate was $900 million. Then they found the second room, then the third. By the end...
$900 million. Do you understand that? $900 million. $900 million in one room. And you're gonna try to tell me that this man wasn't on no one's radar? 900 million, right? How do y'all feel about that? Let me know in the comments, man.
To the count, the cash total reached $4.7 billion, mostly US dollars, some euros, some Dominican pesos, some Colombian pesos, all bundled, sealed, and tagged with route codes. But the cash was only the first layer. On level 2, agents found 12 tons of narcotics packed inside emergency supply crates, cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl analogs, synthetic opioids pressed into tablets with fake pharmaceutical markings. Some crates were labeled for shipment to clinics, others for universities, others for disaster relief staging centers. That was the moment the case became darker. Because the island wasn't just storing drugs, it was preparing them for trust-based delivery. Packages that looked medical, shipments that looked charitable, supplies that arrived during storms, campus health drives, and public emergencies. Nobody questions help when help arrives in a crisis. That was the genius of the machine.
But is it really help? Or is it degradation and destruction? By now, you're beginning to fantasize with the thought that the American government or the American senators were aware of his criminality. You are beginning to see this. Now let me switch your mind to this. Terrorists get money in order to fight an agenda. Namely, let's just say America. This man is using help to help his own greed. When in need of help and services, he is canceling out his help and services by flooding the city with drugs. And you may say, Pharaoh, well, how do you know he floods the city in drugs? We'll be getting to that in just a moment. But before we get into that, man, please hit that Hit that like button, man. Support the channel. Support your boy. Support the movement. I am not monetized, nor would I ever be monetized due to the fact of me pointing out the inconsistencies and exposing the entities that are destroying American fabric, value, and sovereignty. Excuse me. So, if you are now playing with the thought that somebody in higher up, some elite people knew that this man was dealing drugs, and if terrorists get money to feed their agenda, this man is getting money to feed his own agenda, which is greed, still causing death of American lives. These people in Iran, and Muslim countries are just calling America the Great Shaitan. They have not killed nobody in America. Iran has done nothing physical to America, but yet here we have Elias Voss that has used the fabric, security, and compassion of American relief to help push poison into the streets that need their help. This is worse than terrorist activities. This is worse than anything Iran has ever done to America and will ever do to America. This has cost countless lives. This is the war on America by Americans, or being allowed to happen and transpire on American soil to American citizens. This is downright treacherous. This is traitor. This is traitor activity. This is terrorist activity. And this is drug lord activity that should not be stood for. We shouldn't be worried about fucking Iran when we have motherfuckers like this in our midst. Oh, it gets better. It exposes him more.
And that was the horror of it. On level 3, investigators found the server room. A narrow hallway opened into a cold blue glow. Racks of machines lined both walls. Backup power, satellite uplinks, encrypted storage. A wall-mounted screen still showed shipping routes pulsing across the Caribbean and mainland United States. Miami, Savannah, Houston, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Chicago, Newark, San Juan. Every dot was a delivery node. Every node had a vendor. Every vendor had a bank account. Every bank account had a reason to exist. The system had turned crime into infrastructure. Then came the chapel. It was not a chapel. It was a glass-walled counting room buried under the island's main villa. Inside were stainless steel tables, vacuum sealers, currency counters, and a floor drain. On the far wall was a framed photograph of Elias Voss shaking hands with officials after a hurricane relief donation. Below that photo sat the ledgers, physical ledgers, because even the most digital criminals sometimes trust paper more than people. One ledger listed payment initials, another listed shipment losses, a third listed protection allocations. That phrase opened the deepest part of the investigation. Protection allocations included coded references to port supervisors, private security firms, customs consultants, procurement officials, and political fundraisers. Not all were proven participants. Some may have been unknowingly paid through legal channels, but the pattern was undeniable. The network did not survive because one billionaire was clever. It survived because too many people benefited from not asking questions. Elias Voss was not on the island when the raid began. That was the final complication. His private jet had left Miami the night before. Flight plan, Nassau. Actual route, diverted toward Bermuda. For 3 hours, nobody knew if he had escaped. Then an IC aviation unit confirmed the plane had landed at a private strip outside Charleston, South Carolina. Voss had not run overseas. He had gone to a warehouse. Agents later learned why. That warehouse held the backup archive, the insurance file, the names. The payments, the leverage. At 8:16 a.m., FBI agents arrested Elias Voss in a black SUV outside the Charleston facility. He was wearing a gray pullover, no tie, and the same calm expression America had seen in interviews for years. When agents read the warrant, he reportedly asked one question: which level did they reach? Not what is this about? Not there must be a mistake. Which level? That sentence told investigators the island had more secrets than they had found. And he was right. A second search under the Charleston warehouse uncovered hard drives, passport sets, gold bars, and binders labeled by city: Miami, Houston, Atlanta, Boston.
If you see, he didn't run. This is the thing that exposes the whole ordeal about this situation. You may ask yourself, well, damn, he's a drug lord. Why he didn't run to another country without extradition to America? Because he didn't want to be on the run for the rest of his life. And it gives insight and question to why didn't he run? Because somebody threw him under the bus, and he knows it. He didn't run to get away or run to go on the run. He ran to go acquire evidence against those that helped him create this lair. And again, let me reiterate here that Trump and his cronies need a win. His cronies, Cash Patel in the FBI, ICE, Goonies, DHS, DOJ, they were all in on this. These are all entities that Trump uses to push his agenda and narratives. So he didn't run to get away. He ran to go acquire evidence. And he asked him one question when he was caught. Not who gave me up. What floor did y'all reach? How much evidence do y'all know already? Now he's on defense. He wants to compare his evidence to what they may have. Do they know about everything? The names, the people, the entities? That is his only play. Because if he runs, they can still catch him and kill him. He thought that even if I may get locked up, let me accumulate some type of evidence in my defense to where maybe, just maybe, I could get from up under some of this. And maybe Jeffrey Epstein thought the same thing. But what he failed to realize is that acquiring that evidence is what actually put more of a target on his back. Because now those people know he has the evidence in his hand, and people just got that evidence. But what he doesn't know is he's just been set up. The cronies, the goon squad that is involved in his criminality are now in possession of said evidence. It will be wise for you that are watching to burn into your memory the name Elias Voss. Burn it into your mind. See what is gonna become of this case. See how it turns out. And if no names are mentioned, remind yourself that he got caught with $4.7 billion in cash. Not millions, not thousands, but billions. 12 tons of drugs. Not drugs, not 12 tons of coke. 12 tons of drugs. cocktail of drugs, different drugs, servers, information. He had cameras throughout cities. These are unofficial cameras. And who you think is watching these cameras? Who you think's taking a peek? This man had servers, 6 floors, bunkers. Remind yourself that it is said and documented that this man was taking pictures with senators, governors, of Congress officials, assembly men and women. And if a senator doesn't know whose hand they're shaking, they're covering up a lie. And if the senator didn't know it, I'm telling you, everybody needs to be investigated. And I always say, what's my motto, y'all? They expose themselves when trying not to expose themselves. The reason this case is gonna fall off the earth is because there's too many high-ranking officials involved. They think that the American public is dumb and that the American public is just going to see the perception of this drug lord being caught with all this money and drugs and not ask questions of how was he able to do this? Why was he able to use the American compassion sector, sentimental sector of help to fuel his greed and others' greed? The American people need to know who he was working with so they can be tried, fired, and convicted. We need full transparency and full investigation into the public. This man was found with $4.7 billion. That much money can help the United States so much, but yet America is turning a blind eye and letting it go into drugs. This is how America knows how much drugs is entering America and coming through borders, because they have a fucking hand in it.
Phoenix, New York, Los Angeles. Each binder contains shell company records, donation pathways, and photographs of people meeting in private rooms. Some were criminals, some were executives, some were public servants. The DOJ moved fast, because a case like this can collapse under its own weight. Too many defendants, too many jurisdictions, too many agencies, too many lawyers trying to turn the story into confusion. So prosecutors focused on the spine: money laundering, drug trafficking conspiracy, customs fraud, racketeering, obstruction, public corruption. Elias Voss was named as the architect, but not the only one.
But not terrorist activities. Nothing that deals with threatening the sovereignty of America. Nothing. Why? Ask yourself why. Can he beat these charges? Can he claim that he just accumulated this money? Or can he claim that his cameras was there for educational purposes on weather, whatever? Why wasn't he charged with threatening the sovereignty of America?
Three logistics executives were arrested in Miami. 2 customs brokers were arrested in Houston. A foundation finance director was arrested in Boston. A procurement official in Washington resigned hours before charges were unsealed. Private security contractors from the island were detained for questioning. By the end of the first week, more than 70 people were in custody across 5 states. And still, investigators believed they had only reached the outer ring, because when they analyzed the server data, they found delivery codes going back 8 years. 8 years of shipments, 8 years of cash, 8 years of families
8 years. That's 2 presidents right there. Trump only been in power, president the second term, what, 2, 3 years? So this man started when Trump was leaving office the first time. Was this entity created for this very purpose? We know how Trump and them play. We know the subterfuge that they put out there. We know they like pulling the wool over people's eyes. They love telling lies. We know this. This man started 8 years ago. The investigation needs to start all the way back 8 years ago. Who was around him 8 years ago? How did he come into this type of positioning? Who placed him there? Who vouched for him? I'm going to do my own digging. Trust me, I'm going to do my homework on this. It's going to be a part 2. Because the American people needs answers. For 8 years, this man was able to build. The government didn't even ask questions when he built this lair. Didn't even start to investigate him then. We need transparency. Don't y'all think?
Destroyed by substances that entered communities wearing the mask of medicine, charity, and emergency relief. That is where the second human story comes in. In Newark, a paramedic named Darius Bell had responded to overdose calls for nearly a decade.
What we are about to watch now is what I told y'all. How do I know that every time there's relief and there's a catastrophe, he's out there peddling his drugs? How do I know that? We're finna have actual real-time witnessing and confirmation. This is not being done to us by no Iranians, by no Somalians, Iraqis, Libyans, Africans, nor Middle Easterns. This is being done to us by those we call Americans. Some way, somehow, this man, I guarantee you, is an immigrant. I guarantee you, this man is an immigrant. And if he's an immigrant, wherever he's from, he's not going to be tried nowhere. But again, this is not being done to us by no Muslims. This is where we need the strategists to be at, the analysts to be at, here in America, because people are strategizing and analyzing against the fabric of American sovereignty inside of American soil. This type of investigation is more warranted than investigating if fucking Iran has nuclear weapons. I give more fucks about the lives that have been lost at this man's hands because of his drug peddling than about some fake news about Iranian government slaughtering 40,000 fake people. This is the questions, and this is where what needs our attention. Not some shit over there, Trump. And this, I believe, is a setup. I believe this whole organization was created in order to help push an agenda. Whose agenda? Trump's agenda. Look at the entities that are involved with this: the DOJ, the DHS, the FBI, and ICE. All who's been doing Trump's dirty work. So it's not ironic that these are the same entities that are trying to clean up his perception and his presentation. Stay woke, my friend.
He knew the pattern before the government did. He noticed that after major storms, after relief drives, after sudden waves of donated medical supplies, overdoses spiked. At first, he thought it was stress, displacement, trauma, people losing homes and reaching for anything to numb the pain. But after the raid, investigators showed him photographs of seized pills. He recognized the markings. He had seen them on apartment floors, in motel bathrooms, in dorm rooms, in the hands of people who thought they were taking something regulated. That was the human cost of the bunker. Not the cash, not the headlines, not the billionaire in handcuffs. The real cost was measured in parents waiting outside emergency room, students disappearing from campuses, communities trusting boxes stamped with official-looking labels, and a system that learned how to turn compassion into cover. The final realization was not that Elias Voss fooled everyone. It was that he didn't need to. He only needed to fool enough people in the right places. A port label here, a waived inspection there, a donation at the perfect time, a grant written in the language of public good, a foundation name clean enough to silence suspicion. That is how the island worked. Not as a criminal fortress, as a mirror. It reflected back what people wanted to see. A billionaire helping after disasters. A charity moving supplies quickly. A logistics network solving urgent problems. And beneath...
I always tell y'all, you gotta watch people that have unaccounted wealth. When motherfuckers get to saying, oh, I got rich off of crypto, you might be endorsed by them people. Like, if I don't fucking know you, I'm critical of you, especially in these positions. Why? We just watched a whole 15 minutes of the fabric of America, the compassion and sentimental value of America be manipulated for greed, knowing selling drugs brings death, those type of drugs, for sure. We just watched this. This ain't no war. This ain't something that was done by some terrorist, no ISIS, no is Iranian, Hamas, Yahouthis, Houthis, Lebanese, whatever the fuck. This is done by those that are here on American soil. And if it's one of them, it's more of them. While we are so worried about what Iran is doing in that part of the world, we are not from that fucking part of the world. We're not. We are from America. And we are American. And that means something, motherfucker. That means something. See, Trump, that nigga don't know what it means to be American. American ain't being rich. America, being an American, a real American, ain't about waking up every morning with a gold spoon in your fucking mouth. Ain't about going to take a shit on a gold toilet. Being American is the motherfucking struggle of getting and obtaining what you take for granted. Every morning you open your fucking eyes, and every night you close your eyes. The values of a society, of a nation. that we dream to have. That our morals and principles are activated in some of our daily lives in order that America a great perception. But our perception is being decimated, dismantled by those that we put in office. I do not believe that it is just by choice that this man started this type of organization 8 years ago. In 8 years, he accomplished all of this, and he was given free reign. I believe it was a setup. And I'm American, and that's what I'm pissed off at. I'm pissed off that this motherfucker has been doing this to American lives for 8 fucking years, and we are so worried about going to war in the Middle East when all of our resources and technology needs to be about dismantling shit like that. If you are an American and you are not disgusted by this content I just showed you, you can't be disgusted about the Iranians trying to fight to stay alive. If you think that what this man did to American lives and American sovereignty on American soil does not take precedence over the war in the Middle East, you gotta be a MAGA. You gotta be a MAGA.
It all, a bunker holding $4.7 billion in cash and 12 tons of drugs. By the time federal teams sealed Isla Mariposa, the sunrise had burned through the storm clouds over the water. Agents carried evidence boxes out of the villa. Coast Guard crews guarded the docks. Forensics teams photographed every room before anything moved. And in the main house, above the bunker, the dining table was still set for 12. Crystal glasses, white plates, fresh flowers, a private world built to look untouched. But underground, the truth had already been counted, tagged, and hauled into evidence. The raid did not just expose one billionaire. It exposed a method. Hide crime inside legitimacy. Move poison through trust. Turn charity into camouflage. Use complexity as armor. And make the system so profitable that everyone involved convinces themselves they are only handling one small piece. That is why this case hit differently. Because it was not a street corner operation. It was not a cartel warehouse in a forgotten industrial district. It was a private island owned by a man praised for saving communities. It was servers, foundations, grants, ports, planes, lawyers, and luxury. It was darkness wearing a clean suit. And the question left behind is bigger than Elias Voss. If a system like this can exist inside institutions people trust, if billions can move behind charitable language, if entire communities can be harmed while the public sees only philanthropy, then what else is hiding in plain sight? Drop your take in the comments. Was Elias Voss the mastermind, or just the richest name in a machine that still has people protecting it?
This is crazy, but I could be wrong. I'm very rarely, but I'm human. I could be wrong. But these are questions that are valuable. And the questions are, how was he able in 8 years to accomplish $4.7 billion in cash? Fuck the drugs. We know what he was doing with the drugs. Who needs cash on hand that's pushing agendas? We already know the American government went to Afghanistan and dropped $1 billion in cash. What narratives need ready cash? You think that cash is finna go into the American society? You think that cash is finna go to the families of dead victims of drug overdoses, of fentanyl? No. You know what they gonna say if you was to ask that? It's cold, but I'm gonna say it. They gonna tell you they shouldn't have been doing drugs anyway. That's the cold, hard reality of America. That money is not finna help Americans. That money is about to disappear, y'all. See, I look at it like this. Somebody needed that money. And this was a robbery. This was a robbery, y'all. Somebody's agenda need to be pushed right now. And they needed money that they can't be asking the government for. The government the American people don't want America to be spending money on certain bullshit right now. They don't want America to be sending certain entities and countries money right now. So to me, Elias Voss could just be a robbery. But they expose themselves when they try not to expose themselves. How did you know where to rob at? How did they know that money was there? That's what I want to know. Who told this lady that's been doing her job for years? They picked her because she was good at what she does. But then she sees 8 or 9 tankers that are often weighed by several tons, over 5 tons each one, and she never says nothing. Not the first time, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. The 9th one, So let's just say it was one every year. Let's just say it was one every year. That's one too fucking many. That's one too many, y'all. Now, this other content I'm finna pull up is also about ICE, and this is another FBI ICE raid.
Leave the real destination.
This is another ICE raid, FBI raid, DHS, DOJ. These are 2 situations that play at the fabric, at America's fabric and America's heart. Drugs and children. Drugs and children. And when they need it most, they find this and they use it to their ability. But just like we did with the first content, we're going to break this one down. So before we get to the second content, man, we're going to take a small little break. I need 5 so I can talk. I didn't do the comments right, so everybody that's commenting, that's gonna comment, I didn't do the turn the comments on right now in the beginning, so I ain't gonna be able to see them right now. But anyway, that don't stop you from hearing the information, hitting that like button, telling a friend to tell a friend to tell another motherfucking friend. It don't cost much to touch, so hit that like button. What we about to watch right now, like I said, is one of the things that play on the hearts of Americans, and that's children. The trafficking of children, abuse of children, manipulation of children, or abuse of children. That pulls on the string of the heart of the American society. We all love and care about children. And we all wish that this could be a society without drugs. These are two things that play. And America just tried to use them to get a better perception of Trump. Let's read this content.
Lorna Hajdini has been accused in a lawsuit of sexually harassing and abusing a junior male employee. According to reports, including one by the Daily Mail citing the lawsuit, Hajdini is accused of...
Federal agents swarmed a home in Weston this morning. The Department of Homeland Security telling CBS 4 News tonight they were at the home on Lantana Drive for what they're calling a...
On paper, the yacht was clean, registered offshore, flagged through the right channels, staffed by licensed crew, docked in Miami with a manifest that looked boring enough to skip. But two things didn't match. The fuel logs showed routes the captain never reported, and one maintenance worker heard children crying behind a wall that wasn't supposed to exist. By sunrise, FBI and IC agents were standing on the dock, weapons low, radios silent, watching a white luxury yacht sway in the water like it had nothing to hide. They had one order: get inside before the boat moved again. And what they found below deck would turn a customs anomaly into one of the darkest trafficking investigations in years. The yacht was called the Marivel. 98 feet of polished glass, Italian leather, brass railings, and white decks so clean they reflected the skyline. To anyone walking past the marina, it looked like money, not crime. It had hosted charity dinners, private political fund...
And this is what should scare Americans. This is not your ordinary folk doing this. They if you watch the news, they report on crime in the hood or in the surrounding areas, whatever, right? But this is what you need to be scared about at night. People with money, billionaires. This is what you need to be scared of. Not some terrorists, not some Muslims, not some Iranians that have been yelling the great shaitan or death to America for over 50 years and ain't did shit to America but run out of breath. That's all the fuck up Iran's been doing for 50 years is barking up the wrong fucking tree. That ain't no fucking cat or anything in the tree. A normal person would walk by and see a dog barking at a fucking tree and it ain't no animal in it and be like, this motherfucker crazy. And keep it pushing. Billionaires are worse than terrorists in America. Why? We just watched one segment of a billionaire, a philanthropist, a FEMA manipulator, a help degenerator, a billionaire manipulate the fabric and sentimental values of American lives. We just watched 17 minutes of that, of a billionaire's life for the last at least 8 years. Create an agenda to decimate American lives, which in return creates American values. This is a billionaire. A person that was supposed to render help and aid to those who were seeking it. And this motherfucker said, you need help? I'm gonna give you this dope. I'm gonna help you, all right? And I'm gonna get paid triple the time. See, in the last segment, you've seen what it is like for the people that actually sell these drugs to these street-level drug dealers. We look at these street-level drug dealers like Nicky Barnes, Frank Lucas, you know, Freeway Rick, and we see how much money they had. Snitching Big Meech, Southwest T. We see how much money they accumulated, what they was wealth. But the last segment shows you the orchestrators of that and the wealth that they generate off of destroying American values. See, Nicky Barnes and Freeway Rick Ross, they wouldn't exist without forgot his first name. Elias Voss. Elias Voss. See, these drug lords couldn't exist without an Elias Voss. If there were no Elias Vosses, there would be no Freeway Rick Rosses. Bar. Message. Real talk. Not giving you shade to bear you from the heat. Real shit. If these type of motherfuckers didn't exist, the communities would be better. But these people are rich off of the degradation and addiction of Americans. They're manipulating the health system. But you trying to feed us to be worried about some Muslims from overseas? Watch out, boy. Watch out. I could never, I don't like Big Meech. But I know if Elias Voss type of entities that greed didn't exist, the greed of Freeway Rick Ross, Big Meech, AZ, all these people wouldn't exist. What do you think their life and their outcome would be? Who would these people be? You talking about America is under attack and the sovereignty of America is being threatened by Iranians? What about this shit? Now, I ain't gonna stay too long on that, but this really ticks my nerves because people are not scared of billionaires the way they need to be scared of billionaires. They create the standard of criminality. So again, what I'm about to show y'all, this content right here, is another billionaire that was kidnapping children. Let's get into the content.
Razors. Celebrity after parties during Art Basel weekend. Photos from those nights showed champagne towers, violinists, and guests smiling beneath blue deck lights. At the center of those photos was Lorah H., a woman known in Miami's luxury circles as a logistics investor, a philanthropist, and the face of a foundation that claimed to help displaced minors. Her public image was almost too perfect. She donated to shelters. She appeared at conferences. She spoke about protecting vulnerable children from broken systems. That line would come back later.
You know what just crossed my mind? You know what also has been in the news that needed to get people's minds off of? Palm Beach Pete. Palm Beach Pete that looks like Jeffrey Epstein. They caught him, recorded him out there. The teeth look like him, all that, but they want you to believe it's not him. Palm Beach Pete of Florida, Miami. This is another thing that Miami needs a better presentation because they have been caught with Palm Beach Pete in their presence. So who needs to dress up better than Trump, DOJ, DHS, Palm Beach, Miami, Florida? Don't take your eyes and your ears off of Palm Beach Pete. That just came across my mind right now, y'all. It was just kind of crazy that, damn, Miami. What's been in my head about Miami? Palm Beach Pete. Now they bringing these two out. Palm Beach Pete, billionaire. Jeffrey Epstein, billionaire. Elias Voss, billionaire. Lorah H, billionaire. And they gonna tell you not to be scared of billionaires? Sounds like a fucking scary movie to me. If I ever seen one. Come on now.
Because according to federal investigators, the broken system wasn't something she was fighting. It was something she had learned how to use. The first warning didn't come from a victim. It came from paperwork. In March, an IC Homeland Security Investigations analyst in Tampa noticed that the Marivel had made 6 short trips between Miami, Nassau, and a private marina near the Florida Keys. None of those trips were illegal. But the pattern was strange. The yacht would leave with a small crew, stay offshore for less than 12 hours, then return with revised supply records and fuel usage that didn't match the distance traveled. At first, agents thought it was smuggling, cash, drugs, maybe weapons, so they pulled customs data. That's when the second anomaly appeared. The same shell company that owned the yacht had also paid for hotel rooms in Houston, Atlanta, Phoenix, and Newark. Not luxury suites. Blocks of budget motel rooms near airports, bus stations, and immigration processing centers. Then came the third anomaly. A series of wire transfers under $10,000. Always just beneath reporting thresholds. Always routed through businesses that sounded harmless. Youth housing services, international tutoring agencies, medical transport firms. And every few weeks, the money would land in accounts linked to drivers, private security contractors, and one retired child welfare official in Arizona. That was when the FBI came in. Not because they had the full picture. Because they realized someone had built a system designed to make the full picture hard to see. The investigation was given a quiet name, Operation Glass Tide. For 3 months, agents watched. They followed vehicles from airport pickup zones. They reviewed marina security footage. They subpoenaed fuel invoices. They tracked burner phones that activated near shelters, border facilities, and hotels where minors had been temporarily placed. The early theory was narrow. Maybe the yacht was being used for transport. Maybe Lorna was financing part of a trafficking ring. Maybe she was one wealthy name attached to a much larger network. But then agents found the foundation. Lorna's charity had publicly claimed to provide emergency placement support for children without guardians. It had brochures.
Erica Cook. Armenian angels. No. Romanian angels. Children went missing at a staggering rate. Family, billionaires. Lorna H. The fabric of helping. Listen to me, y'all. Billionaires with the power to help and change lives are doing the direct opposite. Destroying them. And in some cases, possibly, it hasn't been confirmed, but possibly unaliving these children. You just heard the report, children with no guardians. Who gonna miss these children? Who gonna report these children? Who do these children have to call home to when they're being abused? No one. And this billionaire knew this. And this billionaire used that to feed and funnel their own fuckery. Sick, twisted fantasies. So again, I don't know Iranians that ever caused harm to America. But I know these billionaires that continue to do this type of shit. So when you hear somebody is a billionaire, be afraid. Be very afraid.
A website, testimonials, a board of advisors, donor dinners, and most importantly, it had access. Access to shelters, access to contractors, access to people who moved minors from one temporary placement to another. That was the first real reveal. The yacht wasn't the beginning. It was the showroom. The system started on land. In Phoenix, FBI agents interviewed a motel clerk who remembered a woman arriving twice a month with groups of children and teenagers. No shouting, no chaos, no obvious violence, just a clipboard. The children were told not to speak to hotel staff. The adults wore badges with foundation logos.
Now, I just want to take y'all back to on YouTube when they were getting people at catching these foundation people during the immigration displacement with all these children, and the children weren't able to speak to nobody. They were huddled into a van and whisked off. This is sounding a little bit like that same situation and sounding like that same foundation. And I will be doing a part 2 to this as well, because I need to do some deeper. I need to find out if this organization that Lorna H is connected to in this segment, if that's the same organization with the fat man that kept turning around his badge that was hanging from his neck. Fat, like white or Hispanic male with the little beard with the black glasses on. But I remember this behavior transpiring through social media, that these children weren't allowed to speak to nobody. But let's carry on.
They paid cash for extra rooms and requested the rear entrance. One child had asked the clerk for a phone. Before the clerk could respond, a handler stepped between them and said, "She's not allowed calls until placement." That phrase sounded official. Placement. It was the kind of word that shut people up. And that was the genius of the operation. It didn't hide behind darkness. It hid behind bureaucracy. By late May, agents believed the network had 3 layers. The first layer was recruitment and extraction. Children from
One thing about a child is gonna say something. Whether it be wrong or whether it be right. A child is gonna do something. And when a child comes to an adult and they ask for something, and somebody says they can't have calls until placement, it's like, okay, what are you doing with them, little girl? But like they said, it was the in front of you that made it seem okay, but not enough people ask questions. Hey, hold on, you heard mother, okay, but she wants a phone though. She needs to make a phone call right now. Like, okay, I need to let her use this phone to call her people in your presence. I don't know what's going on, but people don't do that. People are not too concerned. And they played on this. And us as Americans should feel disgusted about how people play with our feelings.
unstable homes, border intake situations, emergency shelters, and runaway cases were identified by people with access to records. The second layer was movement. Drivers transported them between cities using rented vans, medical transport paperwork, and fake placement approvals. The third layer was monetization. This was where the yacht came in. Federal agents believed high-paying buyers, brokers, and corrupt intermediaries were being brought onto the Marivel for private events where children were treated as inventory without ever being described that way out loud. The language was coded. Transfers, sponsorships, special placement, long-term support. One intercepted message read, 2 available after Miami. Preference young, quiet, no paperwork complications. That message changed everything. because it proved what agents feared. This wasn't just illegal transport. It was trafficking disguised as care. Then came the first cinematic break in the case. A maintenance contractor working on the yacht reported that a storage panel behind the lower salon didn't align with the blueprints. At first, he thought it was a renovation mistake. Then he heard tapping, 3 soft knocks from behind the wall. When he asked the crew about it, they told him it was plumbing. But the next day, he found that same panel sealed with new screws and a magnetic lock. He took a photo. That photo ended up in the hands of federal agents. And suddenly, the raid was no longer optional. It was urgent. The FBI's Miami field office coordinated with ICE HSI, the Coast Guard, and local tactical units. The problem was timing. The Marivel was scheduled to leave Miami before dawn for what the captain described as private repositioning. But investigators believed the real destination was international waters. Once the yacht crossed out, rescue became harder, evidence became easier to destroy, and suspects could scatter into countries where extradition would take months. So they moved before sunrise. At 4:38 a.m., 2 black SUVs rolled past the marina gate. A Coast Guard vessel waited near the channel. ICE agents covered the dock. The FBI team approached from the rear gangway. No sirens.
There goes that FBI and ICE collaboration again. There it goes, one more time. Trump's cronies. One more again.
No warning, just a knock that sounded like the end of an empire. The captain opened the hatch and froze. Seconds later, agents flooded the deck. One crew member reached for a phone and was pinned against the bar. Another tried to run toward the engine room. On the lower deck, agents found locked doors with no handles from the inside. Behind the false wall, they found the hidden compartment. Not a room in the normal sense. A narrow, modified space between storage and crew quarters, lined with vents, fold-down mattresses, bottled water, and surveillance cameras pointed inward. Inside were children, some silent, some crying, some too exhausted to react. By the time the first group was brought onto the dock, paramedics had set up blankets and medical triage stations behind privacy screens. Agents expected maybe 20 victims. Then they opened the second compartment, then the third. The final number was 122 children and teenagers. Rescued from the yacht, associated vehicles, and 2 nearby holding locations hit during coordinated warrants across Miami-Dade County. That number became the headline. But inside the investigation, the number raised a worse question. How many had already passed through? The answer started coming from the servers. During the yacht search, an FBI digital forensics specialist found a locked cabinet beneath the owner's suite. Inside were 3 encrypted laptops, satellite phones, and a drive hidden inside what looked like a luxury watch case. On that drive was a database. Names, ages, photos, movement dates, payment status, risk notes. Some entries were marked with green dots, some with red. Others had the word resolved. Agents would later say the file structure looked less like a criminal notebook and more like corporate logistics software. That was the mid-twist. The yacht was not just a transport hub. It was a command center. A floating office for a trafficking enterprise that had been operating across multiple states while presenting itself as humanitarian work. And Lorah was not simply funding it. She appeared to be managing the pipeline. But the deeper investigators went, the more disturbing the network became. Because someone inside the system had been feeding it. In Arizona, an emergency placement coordinator had allegedly flagged children with weak family contact. In Texas, a contractor responsible for transport had changed route logs after minors disappeared. In Georgia, a private shelter employee used an encrypted app to send updates on which children were low inquiry, meaning fewer people were asking questions about them. That phrase devastated investigators. Low inquiry. It meant a child was easier to erase. One of the rescued teenagers, a 15-year-old named Maya in federal record.
Erase? That scares me. Just to use that analogy, that word, scares me. We hear the stories of cutting off kids' faces, drinking kids' blood, sacrificing children. It scares me. Erase? This is the word they choose, erase? It scares me.
Told interviewers she had been moved through 4 cities in 9 days: Phoenix, Dallas, Atlanta, Miami. At every stop, adults told her the same thing: "You're being transferred." She said they used official words so often that she stopped asking whether it was legal. At a motel outside Atlanta, she saw a younger boy refuse to get into a van. A woman crouched beside him, smiled, and promised him he was going somewhere safer. Maya remembered the woman's bracelet. Gold, thin, with a blue stone. Weeks later, investigators reviewed marina footage. Lorna wore the same bracelet as she stepped aboard the Marivel. That detail became small but powerful, because cases like this are not solved by one dramatic confession. They are built from receipts. A bracelet, a fuel discrepancy, a motel register, a child's memory, a maintenance worker's photo, a wire transfer that was $400 under the threshold. By June, federal warrants expanded beyond Florida. In Houston, agents raided a medical transport company whose ambulances had no medical equipment inside. In Newark, they seized records from a tutoring nonprofit that had never employed tutors. In Las Vegas, DEA agents joined after finding links between traffickers and drug suppliers used to keep older victims compliant during movement. The network was bigger than anyone expected. Not because it had thousands of members, because it had the right members in the right places. People who controlled forms, people who scheduled rides, people who approved temporary housing, people whose signatures made suspicion disappear. And that was the second major reveal. The trafficking operation did not survive by avoiding institutions. It survived by borrowing their language. Care plans, relocation, sponsorship, transport authorization. Words meant to protect children were turned into camouflage. Then came the money. DOJ financial analysts traced more than $48 million across shell companies tied to luxury rentals, consulting contracts, event planning, and international youth initiatives. Some of that money paid staff, some paid bribes, some bought silence, but a large portion appeared to move through high-end auctions, art purchases, yacht maintenance invoices, and real estate deals in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Southern California. That meant the trafficking operation was not just about abuse. It was also a laundering machine. Human suffering turned into clean money. One ledger recovered from Lorna's office listed payments next to initials instead of full names. A column at the end was labeled Donor Confidence. Investigators believed it referred to buyers and sponsors who wanted proof the operation remained protected. Protected from police. Protected from immigration checks. Protected from whistleblowers. But the protection had cracks. One driver had saved dashcam audio. One shelter worker had kept screenshots. One accountant had copied wire records after noticing payments to minors were being disguised as education stipends. And one rescued child had memorized the first name of a man who visited the yacht twice. That man became the insider reveal. A former federal contractor who had worked on child relocation logistics after emergency intake.
Federal contractor. You think this is his first run? You think this is the only organization he's tied to? Federal, though. Federal. And then we say that higher ups, the elite in America, like children. And he was a federal. All right.
Surges. He knew the system. He knew where oversight was weak. He knew which agencies didn't share data quickly. And, according to investigators, he sold that knowledge. He wasn't the public face. Lorna was. But he was the architect. The person who understood that a missing child inside a chaotic bureaucracy could be made to look like a delayed transfer, a duplicated file, or a clerical mistake. That was the final realization. This case was never just about one yacht. The yacht was the symbol, the luxury, the arrogance, the place where the powerful believed no one would look too closely because everything looked expensive and official. But the real crime lived in the gaps between systems, between shelter and transport, between transport and placement, between one state database and another, between a child asking for help and an adult saying, "The paperwork says otherwise." When the DOJ announced charges, the language was careful. Trafficking conspiracy, money laundering, document fraud, obstruction, bribery, illegal transport of minors. More arrests were expected. But for the families searching for children, the legal language didn't capture the truth. The truth was 122 children walked off a yacht that morning because one worker heard tapping behind a wall and didn't ignore it. One of the youngest rescued children reportedly asked a paramedic if the agents were real police. The paramedic said yes. The child asked, "So we can stop moving now?" That question stayed with everyone on the dock. Because for those children, rescue wasn't a headline. It was the first still moment after weeks, months, maybe years of being passed between adults who treated them like files, debts, favors, and profits. By the end of the operation, the Marivel sat sealed under federal custody. No music, no champagne, no polished guests walking across the deck. Just evidence tags, floodlights, and agents carrying out boxes of records from rooms designed to impress people who never asked what was underneath them. Lorna's image collapsed fast. The foundation website disappeared. Photos were deleted. Donors denied knowing anything. Former partners claimed they had only attended events, but federal investigators kept repeating one point. A system this organized does not operate because one person is evil. It operates because many people decide not to look. The captain who never questioned cargo. The contractor who changed logs. The official who approved transfers too quickly. The donor who heard rumors and kept writing checks. The staff member who saw frightened children and accepted the explanation because the badge looked legitimate. That is how a nightmare becomes infrastructure. Not all at once, step by step, form by form, signature by signature. And that is why the yacht raid mattered. Not because it ended everything, but because it exposed the machine. A machine built to hide children in plain sight, behind charity language, luxury money, and official paperwork. The FBI and IC didn't just storm a yacht. They tore open a door that powerful people believed would stay locked forever. And behind that door were 122 children who were never supposed to be found. So here's the question. If a system like this can exist inside places people trust, wrapped in the language of rescue, charity, and protection, what does that say about everything we don't see? Drop your thoughts below. And if you believe stories like this need to be exposed, share this video, because silence is exactly what systems like this depend on.